This is the next flip. It's a 2013 1.2 Hyundai i10. It's in dire need of some mechanical and cosmetic TLC in order to turn it into a profit. Let's get straight to it. There's a Hyundai i10 that's popped up for sale and it looks like a good flip. It's still got MOT, it's got a suspected head gasket issue, selling for around 850 quid, but with no problems and good MOT, it should sell for around 2.5 grand. So I've just got to go check it out and hopefully buy it. A short drive later and there it was. After a bit of haggling with the owners, I managed to get them down to 650 quid. And just like that, the car was mine. Although annoyingly, as it didn't run, I did have to call a recovery truck, which did set me back another £80. Back in the workshop now, and for context, this is what an engine sounds like with a blown head gasket when you try and start it. It sounds like this because somewhere in one of the combustion chambers, the head gasket has failed, meaning it can't hold proper compression. As it turns out, I did find out from the previous owners that the engine had been running without any coolant for a while, which had completely cooked the cylinder head. This also meant that the head gasket had most likely failed around one of the coolant passages in the engine, allowing coolant into the combustion chamber. In short, the engine was cooked, and it would be way more economically viable to buy another one as opposed to fix this one, which is exactly what I did at the brutal cost of £720. But with the new engine here, it was time to crack on. The first job, get the car into position and unload the engine. Then, wasting absolutely no time, headlights off, the car in the air and ready to remove the engine. The front bumper comes off pretty easily to reveal the front crash bar and radiators, which also needed removing. Once they're off, it reveals access to the whole engine, removing coolant hoses, wiring looms, clutch cables, gear linkages, and well, pretty much everything attached to the engine apart from the engine mounts. Next up, the drive shafts. The hub nut comes off, pinch bolt out, a little bit of persuasion from the ball joint splitter and the hammer, the hub separates and the drive shaft is free. Absolutely lovely. The other side, however, not so much. This thing refused to come out for neither love nor money. Naturally, I did get a little bit carried away with the hammer, and yeah, that drive shaft is f***ed. But we'll deal with that later. With the engine and gearbox almost ready to move, we disconnected the exhaust and the lower engine mount. The engine crane comes out of retirement, the balance bar gets fitted and the engine hooked up, and then after a brief but passionate wrestling match with the car, we won. The engine and gearbox was out. The next job was swapping everything over. Auxiliaries, manifolds, studs, belts, wiring, coolant pipes, the lot. And the clutch and gearbox also need to go onto the new engine. After a bit of encouragement with the hammer, the gearbox comes off easily. And I am reusing this clutch because around 300 miles before I bought the car, it actually had a brand new clutch, flywheel and a reconditioned gearbox. The old clutch comes off and the new one comes back on, aligned with my high-tech professional alignment tool, also known as a 1/2-inch extension bar. With the gearbox back on and the whole assembly ready for install, it can now be put back on the crane ready to put in the car. And refitting was tricky. It was a classic case of hoses, wires, brackets, getting snagged on absolutely everything it can do. 2 sets of hands and eyes always makes it easier, and thankfully, after a while, it all went into place. Straight back to work, putting the wiring loom on, clutch cables, gear linkages, coolant pipes, everything was going well, except for this. I have absolutely no idea what this sensor does. Possibly cam timing, EGR, mood regulator, I don't know. All I know is the old engine had one and this one didn't. Now once this small existential crisis was resolved and everything else was fitted, including the battery, it was finally time to try and start the car. And again. Bit of brake cleaner down the intake. In comes the micro for the jump start.
Here we go. A little bit squeaky, but she runs.
Now that my very overpriced engine actually runs, I can finally start putting it all back together. Starting off with the front crash bar and radiators, and then the bumper can finally be reunited with the car, shortly followed by the headlights. The car was feeling a little bit thirsty, so I gave it some coolant, fired it up again, bled the system, checked for leaks, and to go over everything for mistakes. I still have to fix that squeal though, which should just be a loose auxiliary belt, but I was dead chuffed. The engine was in and running, fault free. Job well done.
So today's paint day.
fixing that corner. I mean, look at that. That's not an appealing aspect for a bar. So I started sanding at 240 grit, then 400, 600, 800, 1200, and then 2000. That's the result now. Do need to get rid of all that rust in there before I can paint over it, otherwise the rust will just come straight back through. Gonna use some black BMW Sapphire paint. And after masking up and shaking out the living shit of this spray can, it was finally time to paint. And after 2 coats, this was the result. It's not perfect, but it's much better than it was before. And crucially, it's no longer a red flag for potential buyers. And with that, the car is ready for the sale. The engine had been replaced and the rusted paintwork had been resprayed. Apart from the fact that it wasn't ready yet, was it? Because I still had to fix that drive shaft. The shaft was completely seized into this hub. I imagined that an air chisel would be able to move it, but I was wrong. After cutting the majority off of it with an angle grinder, I moved over to the hydraulic press to try and get the final bit off, and after 5 tons of pressure, it still wouldn't budge. So with all my options exhausted, I turned back to the humble angle grinder, and with a bit of cutting and persuasion from the air chisel, so £13 and 2 days later, back at the car, a lot's happened that I didn't film. But the drive shaft's in, all of this assembly is complete, just got to put the wheels on, and that's done. Finally, the car is moving under its own power again. Just giving it a little wash at this point as it was time for the advert, and after a few photos, I hop in the car to move it again, and this happened. It doesn't drive now. Ready? First gear. Right, first gear. No way. What the? I've got no idea what just happened, but gears are working fine now. So I'm just gonna put it on the floor and see what happens. Please, don't do it again. Let's start it again. So after getting frustrated with it for quite a few days, I think I found the issue. I'm gonna go underneath the car and look at the CV joints. This side looks absolutely fine. This one, however, looks a bit odd, but it gets interesting when we start the car up. Because that one moves absolutely no worries. This one, however, is moving. The problem itself lies with the driver's side CV joint, which conveniently is the one that I changed, and evidently either I did something wrong or the part's faulty. So okay, so now that the wheel hub is being completely disconnected, you can see the problem. Ooh, look at that. Look at that, it's not meant to do that. Turns out I may have been slightly too generous with my earlier tool usage. This snap ring, along with some of the splines, were completely ruined. So another drive shaft it was. And with that problem solved, the car was now finally done and finally mobile. The next day I took it for a test drive to my garage, where I also had an MOT booked to try and improve the resale value. And if you're thinking, ooh, he's just going to get a dodgy MOT, you would be wrong. Back at the Hyundai again. Now we're fixing MOT repairs. One of the repairs was a cord exposed. Now I couldn't see a cord when I checked, but evidently I did not check hard enough because yeah, that's buggered. The change itself is not too taxing, especially as these wheels are quite small. Once it's inflated and balanced, it can go on the car and that's another job done. Next, we're addressing the lower ball joint that was excessively worn, apparently. The cheapest option was to remove and replace the ball joint rather than the actual control arm itself, which is exactly what I did. After getting rid of the rust, I used the air chisel and the angle grinder to cut out the circlip holding the ball joint in place. Finally, going back over to the hydraulic press to push the ball joint out, the new ball joint gets pressed into the control arm and then securing it using a circlip. Getting the control arm on was an absolute nightmare with the car being on the ground, and after 2 rounds of agony, it was finally in place and back together. The next day comes and so does the new drop link. I wasted absolutely no time getting the old one off and the new one installed. The MOT repairs were done and the car was ready for the dreaded retest. And would you look at that, it passed. And now the daily driving begins. you know, by driving it for a couple of 100 miles and make sure the car's all right, because I've had so many issues with this car. I just want it to go and I don't want it to come back. I don't want to hear from the next owner saying how something's broken. I'd rather something break in my ownership. That way I can fix it before it sells.
Let's go.
Turns out, you've got to be careful what you wish for, because after I said that, this happened. I actually can't believe this car, man. I'm less than a mile down the road. Why have I got no ignition now? Oh my Christ. Remember this sound? I know what the problem is. My drive shaft has popped out. I actually can't believe that. Oh my. So, sitrep, I was driving along, my drive shaft popped out, and now I've got no power. I've got nothing. I've got jack. Oh. 20 minutes later, my mate rocks up with a spare battery. And guess what? The electrical problem has been remedied. As it happens, it was literally just a dead battery. So, like, I have no clue how that happened. This car's cursed, man. Oh well. So all I've done is just jack the car up and dropped it again, and it's settled the drive shaft in place. And as a result, I'm gonna try and drive back to the garage that I work at. Not really sure if it's a good idea or not, but man, I'm so anxious about this. Here we go. Ignoring the new noise, a huge gap in traffic presented itself, and I had to take it. Literally just got to get to the top of this hill. Oh, I've got enough speed to get there. I beg, I beg, I beg. Yes! Come on! I'm being overtaken, but it doesn't matter. I'm gonna get back to the garage. Oh yeah! Yes! That drive shaft will be the end of me. I ended up ordering yet another drive shaft. This time it was a used one, as I knew I wouldn't have any faults with it, and moving straight back over to the car to get it fitted, getting the old drive shaft out and the new one in. Yeah. And thankfully it was a one out, one in scenario, which was especially nice as gearbox oil isn't exactly cheap. After reassembling the hub, I could finally drive it worry-free and take it back for the long-awaited photos for the advert. I took photos all over the car, as well as a walk-around video and a few interior shots, accompanied by a chunky, healthy description of the car. And with the car posted on eBay and Facebook Marketplace, now we just wait. And it sold at asking price 5 days later, but then the buyer ghosted me. Fantastic. After posting the advert again, I had the usual tyre kickers and time wasters, with people even asking me what kind of ganja I've been smoking. I then changed it from buy it now to auction in the hope that that would gain a bit more traction, and I watched the car sell without even hitting the reserve. So it was time to dance with the devil. Auto Trader is the most expensive way to sell your car, but this time the money was warranted. After posting the advert, a few days later we had some genuine interest, and the following weekend we met up and the car sold at a respectable £2,100. So the cost breakdown. The car cost me 650 quid, the recovery another 80. The new engine, oil and filter cost me £757. The paint and gearbox oil was technically free as it was left over from another project. The CV joint I butchered was £17. The MOT was £25 and the new tyre was £32. The ball joint was £16 and the drop link was £11, with tax and temporary insurance totalling £46. I spent 58 quid on the new battery and £37 in the new second-hand drive shaft. And finally, 56 quid on advertisement fees. And that puts my total costs up to an eye-watering £1,735. And with it selling for £2,100, it left me with a measly profit of £365. Hardly my best day at the office, but if you've got any questions, I always reply to my comments, so let me know, and hopefully I'll see you in the next flip.